what I've done is, still in my project, just to keep things simple, I've created a new Python file called friends.py, and throughout this project we're going to be running this file. I've also created two text files, nearbyfriends.txt and people.txt. Inside people.txt, you can write a bunch of names. I'm going to go with the staples of Teclado, starting with Rolf, of course, and getting some Charlies in there. And these people are just people that are somewhere near you, let's say. Inside our friends.py file, now we're going to write a short program that is going to first ask the user for a list of 3 friends. Then, for each friend, we're going to tell the user whether they are in the same city. And finally, for each friend that is in the same city, we're going to save them to the nearby friends file. So it has to do 3 things. First, ask the user for 3 friends. You can do this either using the split method of string, or you can ask for 3 distinct friends. That's fine, 3 inputs. Then you'll have to open the people.txt file and read all of the lines. You may, hint, read lines. Read lines could be interesting for this exercise. I'd recommend that you Google it and see what you can find. But of course, we're going to implement this in the project in just a moment. So you want to read all of the lines in people, and that's going to give you a list of strings, a string per line. That's the friends, or rather, that's the people nearby. Then we're going to compare the people in that file with the friends that the user entered. If the friend is amongst those people, we're going to tell the user and also put them into this file. So we're effectively copying the people file into the nearby friends file selectively, allowing the user to choose which friends they want to copy. So I'd advise now, I know that this is a larger undertaking than we've done previously, and I don't necessarily expect you to be able to do this right off the bat. However, by building projects and by struggling a little bit, that is the best way to learn and to really get familiar with the research that you have to do in order to become proficient at programming. So I'd encourage you to pause the video, give it a go for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, and then come back and we will continue implementing this project here, and I'll explain all the choices that I'm making in order to get it to work. Let's go for it. Okay, I'm sure that you at least got some place with this project. I am confident that you've managed to do some of the things here, if not all of them. Now, if you do have any trouble on things that you're not really sure of, feel free to ask in the course Q&A before watching this, and I'll be glad to help you in order to solve any doubts you have as your own research. But once you're ready, we can continue and complete this project here. The first thing to do is to ask the user for a list of 3 friends. So for this, I'm going to use the input function, of course, and I'm going to say enter 3 friend names separated by commas. No spaces, please. Now, these friend names are going to be something like Rolf, Jose, Charlie. Something like this is what the user is going to enter. So this is going to be a string that has 3 friend names separated by commas. And whenever you have a string that has a separator in it, like the comma in this case, you can do .split. And what this does is, instead of a string with 2 commas and 3 names, it's going to give you something that looks like this. That's a list of 3 elements. Notice how the commas are now gone, they are part of the list, and instead the elements are made up into a list of individual names. That's what the split method does. I'm not sure if we've looked at that one before, but nonetheless, that's how you can split a string into multiple constituent parts. Of course, if you had asked friend 1 and said input enter your first friend, that's totally cool. That is the way that I would expect you to do it if you didn't know about this split method, and that's okay. Now that we've got a list of friends, and of course, if you did ask for friend 1, friend 2, friend 3, then I would expect you at some point to have created a list of friend 1, friend 2, and friend 3. That way, you would have a list of friends as opposed to 3 independent variables. This would be a great way to do it without the split function. The split method, sorry. Now that we've got a list of friends though, we can open people.txt and read it so that we know the people that are nearby. So again, we're going to open people.txt in read mode, of course, because we are just reading it. We're not going to write to this file, we're going to write to the other file. And then we're going to look for the people who are in the same city or people that are nearby. People nearby is going to be file or people dot read lines. The read lines method that I suggested as a hint earlier on is essentially just going to read the file but giving you a list of line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, which is a pretty handy way of reading a file, especially because we've got one friend per file, one friend per line in our data file. So that's a good way to go about it. And if through your research you didn't quite find this method, that's totally fine. I'm sure that at that point, if you couldn't find that method, that was the point where you thought, I need to keep watching this. And that's totally fine. Of course, I don't expect you to know everything about files when we haven't even covered it yet. But nonetheless, it's always good to do some research. Even if you don't find anything, it's good to train yourself to do that. And at the end, of course, we're going to close the file. Now that we've read it and we've got our contents in this variable, we no longer need the file for anything because we can still access the variable with the values. Next, we're going to find out which people are friends who are also nearby. So the way to do that is, the best way to do that would be with a set. So we've looked at sets before. What I'll do now is say something like friends set is a set of friends. This turns the friends list up here into a set, removing duplicates, and also making it unordered, and it allows us to do things like intersection, which are going to be pretty handy. Then we'd turn the people nearby into a set. So now we have two sets, one of friends and one of people nearby. So we know, of course, that to get the ones that match, the friends that are nearby, we just need to intersect them. So we'll do friends set dot intersection people nearby set. And that gives you the friends that are nearby because it gives you the elements that match on both friends set and people nearby set. Now that we've got our friends that are nearby, we can open the nearby friends.txt file. So let's say nearby friends file is going to be open nearby friends.txt, and this time it's going to be in write mode because we're going to be writing some data to it. And then we can iterate over our nearby friends for friend in nearby, or sorry, it's friends nearby set. I'm going to call it friends nearby set just for consistency, since these are all called set. And we're just going to say, hey, this friend is nearby. I'm going to say friend is nearby, meet up with them. And we're also going to save them to the file. So that would be nearby friends file dot write and then friend. Now, there are a couple of problems with this code here. So the first thing we have to do, of course, before we run it is... sorry, I just pressed the Siri button there by accident. It's a touch screen, this touch bar thing. We have to close the file. Of course, remember to close it, otherwise it will keep open between executions, even after you've closed the program. Not a good thing. Okay, so let's run it. We can see that it asks us to enter 3 friend names, separated by commas, so we can enter Rolf, Charlie, and Rudolph, for example. That one doesn't exist, but, right, we should get 2, right? We get nothing. Let's check the nearby friends file. It's got nothing. So I wonder why that is. Well, what happens when we encounter a bug? Of course, we must look at the checklist that I provided earlier in the last section of looking at our code first of all. So I'm going to minimize this thing here. We're going to once again go through this code and what it's doing. We ask the user for some input. That gets split on the comma. Now, I have quite a bit of experience and I know that this split seems reasonable. And I know that this is going to provide a list. So, okay, this looks good so far. We're opening a file for reading, and we did this earlier on and it worked fine. We used the same syntax, so this is okay. And then we're reading the lines. We didn't read lines earlier on, so we're not really sure what this is doing. Then we're closing the file. This seems legitimate. Then we create a set of our friends, and we've looked at sets earlier on, but I'm not sure if we actually converted a list to a set. So maybe this is something that we have to look into before we continue. As you can see, there's a couple of unknowns in this program. Like, what exactly is readLines doing? What exactly is set doing? And then we're calling it again. Now, I'm telling you these are giving you sets, and this is the intersection of the two, so these should be the friends that match. But then all we're doing is opening the file for writing and iterating over the friends and printing them out. So there's really nothing that could go wrong in here. The only things that could go wrong is either readLines, because we're not really sure what it's doing. We've used it, and I've told you what it does, but maybe there's some small nuance there that we're not sure about. And of course the set. So we didn't get an error. The checklist for error handling said that you should copy the error and go into Google, paste it in. There's no error here, so maybe we don't want to go to Google just yet. We could go through our program as the computer, checking exactly what we've entered, exactly what it turns out, and exactly what everything does. But it's more difficult to do that because we're not 100% confident on everything that every single line of code is doing. And if you're ever at that stage where you're not 100% confident that something is doing what you expect, you have to really be honest with yourself and say, I've never actually ran this before. Maybe it's doing something unexpected. And I've run this before, and so I know exactly what the problem is, but you don't know this. So the first thing to do is to set a breakpoint where you are least comfortable. Or rather, where your discomfort starts to, where your discomfort begins. So set a breakpoint, and then just run the program using the debugger. The debugger is extremely useful. So as you can see, the first thing that we get is the console, and it asks us to enter 3 friend names. So let's enter the same thing as before. Rolf, Charlie, Rudolph. So we have our friends list. You can see it down here. It's a list of 3 elements. So we're pretty confident on the split method, and indeed it seems to be giving us what we wanted. A list of 3 elements, Rolf, Charlie, and Rudolph down there. We've then opened the file, and we know what this does. It just gives us a text IO wrapper. That's just a class that allows us to interact with the file. And then we've got people.readLines. So let's press step to the next line. And now notice how people nearby has acquired a value after we read the lines. And the value is a rather bizarre value. We've got Rolf \n, Jose \n, Chris \n, and so forth until Steve, which does not have a \n. Now, I mentioned earlier on, I believe, what the \n means when we were working on a menu for the Milestone Project 1, and it's a new line. So if we open up people.txt, you can see that each line has something at the end that tells the editor to go on to the next line. Otherwise, everything would just continue on the same line. And that character is the \n character. It means new line. So we go on to the next line, and then new line at the end, next line, and so forth. You cannot see that character, but it exists. It is there. That's how the text file knows to split this into lines. It's not magic. There is something there telling it go to the next line, and that's this \n character. Okay, so now we probably know what the problem is. But let's continue into the sets just to analyze exactly what's going on. We've got a set now of 3 elements. Notice how they are not in order or not in the same order as before. We have a set of the people nearby, and notice how we do have the set converted here. But again, each element has this \n. So of course, when we do the intersection, it's an empty set, because Charlie is not equal to Charlie / n, and Rolf is not equal to Rolf / n. So this is not going to work. And at the end, of course, we iterate over an empty set, nothing happens, and we close the file. So what can we do? Well, the first thing that I would do is a list comprehension. And in that list comprehension, I would turn the lines into lines with no \n at the end. So let's do that. List comprehension, we're going to say line strip for line in people.readlines. Then I'm going to set the breakpoint over here, and we're going to debug again. Enter our 3 names. And now notice how the people nearby no longer have the \n. This is what the strip method does. Any white space, like normal spaces, tabs, or new line characters, get removed from the start and the end of the string. So in this case, the \n's got removed from the end of the strings, so that we ended up just with a string with no white space. That's what the strip method does. Pretty useful method there. Now we've got the list of people nearby. The sets are going to match. You've got Charlie and Charlie, Rudolph and nothing, and Rolf and Rolf. So let's have a look, see if the friends nearby set does have the values we want. And indeed it does. We have Rolf and Charlie, our 2 friends. And to be honest, the first few times you run your programs, it may be beneficial to run through them using the debugger, because it just lets you go line by line, examining exactly what's going on. We've opened the file here. We're going to iterate over our friends. The first one we get is Rolf. Remember, the set is not ordered, so it could be either. And then we're printing something out. Let's go and check the console. We can see that Rolf is nearby. We should meet up with them. And then we're going to write to the friends file. That has happened, but I don't think that the file yet contains anything. It does not, because it won't be saved actually to the disk until we close the file, or until we overrun the buffer, which is not something we're going to talk about in this video, but nonetheless. And those are the only 2 moments when the file actually gets saved to the disk. It doesn't get saved instantly in order to improve performance. So again, Charlie, same thing happens. Then we move over to closing the file, and we close it. We've seen that Rolf is nearby, and Charlie is nearby in the console, and our file should now have our friends. But of course, we didn't include a \n character, so these friends are all in one line. So, if we go back to our friends.py and we put a \n after friend, that means that when we write to the file, we'll write the friend name, and then we will also write this invisible new line character that would move us into the next line, and then we will write the next friend there as well. Also, the reason I'm adding a new line at the end is because Pep8 asks me to. It's got this grey squiggly line there. So yeah. Okay, now we are happy with the way our program runs. We can remove the breakpoint and just play it in normal mode. Then we can enter 3 friends. And you can see that we get Rolf is nearby, Jose is nearby, meet up with them. I thought we had an Anne in people, but I guess it's Anna. Yep. And then we can go and check our nearby friends, and we see that they are in now 2 lines. Also notice, though, that we have line number 3, which is an empty line. We didn't have that in people. And to be honest, I think we should have an empty line at the end, just so every line is the same. Every line has the new line character, as opposed to the last line not having the new line character. So I'm okay with this. But of course, if you are not, you can try to experiment with your code. Make it only print the new line character when you are not printing the last element of the set. You can use the enumerate function for that. I won't go into it in this video since we're getting pretty long now. That's it for this video. We have created a small app that copies a file selectively. And we've learned about a bunch of stuff. First, about the new line characters. They're everywhere, and we need to strip them out if we want to have no white space. That includes spaces, tabs, and new line characters in a string. We've learned about the read lines method of the file that lets us read each line of the file as a separate element in a list. I don't know if we've looked at the split method before, but if we didn't, then we've learned about that. if we did, we've reviewed it. It allows us to split a string into constituent parts according to a particular character in that string. And then we've also reviewed sets and using intersection to calculate matching elements. Remember I told you when we looked at sets that they would be pretty useful? They are pretty useful. And finally, we've also reviewed writing to a file, something a bit more useful. So that's it for this